been looking for a house.
Hi, Joe.
Really? Like a home.
All right.
Out of breath.
Here we go.
Oh.
Call this meeting to order. It's the City of Muskegon Planning Commission special meeting of Tuesday, July 11th, 2023. Today we have just one item on the agenda. It's new business, but we'll start the meeting with roll call.
Johnson.
Here.
Hood. Seifert.
Here.
Keener. Here. Doyle.
Here.
Mazade.
Here.
Montgomery Keast. Here. Spataro.
Here.
Mahowski. We have quorum.
Okay, we have one item under new business. Staff, would you like to tell us about that?
Yes, this is case 2023-17. This is a request to amend the plan unit development at Adelaide Point by Adelaide Point POZB. The applicant seeking a couple of minor approval amendments to the PUD. They include the removal of one of the condominium and retail buildings. This will eliminate 55 residential units from the plan. They would also like to change the other condominium and retail building to a hotel. This will eliminate another 55 residential units from the plan, but will add 125 hotel rooms. They would like to reposition one of the condominium buildings, the one that is noted R1 on the new plans. And they have a slight modification of Adelaide Circle that doesn't really change much of the design of the plan. We've included the copies of the current AP site plan. That corrected one went out in an email last week, and the proposed AP site plan as well. The original PUD was approved in September of 21, and it was again amended in June of 2022, and again in February of 2023. The Planning Commission has the ability to approve the proposed amendments to the plan if they consider them incidental or minor. If the Planning Commission determines that the proposed modifications are significant or major, a public hearing in accordance with Section 2332 must be upheld. Staff recommends approval of this plan. We consider these changes minor as they are creating less density, and the changes do not alter the street design or the basic design of the plan. In addition, all of the publicly accessible places and amenities will remain unchanged.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
Not for staff.
Is there any way for us to see the comparison
Yes.
documents?
If you could open up this one first. I don't know if you can show them side by side. Maybe if you do
I don't
this.
know how to do that.
If you just click on that.
This one?
Yep. And then kind of click and drag it to the side. Just anywhere here.
It's kind of hard to tell the plans edge.
Just go all the way over, and it should like. Can you go over all the way farther? Oh, well, it's connected to this, so it's not going to do that. Well, just open that one up fully.
Who's on that?
Maybe not.
And you could pull this down.
I just want to.
Maybe zoom a little bit out too, maybe to 75%.
And that's the original site plan.
So this is the original site plan. You can see A1 is the building that they're talking about repositioning. And then R2 and R3 are separate buildings that face the marina. There will just be one of those buildings now, and that would be the hotel. And if you look at the other site plan, proposed site plan,
Do it on side by side.
It would be nice.
go to 75% again. And scroll down.
Get a 14-inch screen, use it.
And here you can see where the building R1 is repositioned, moved north a little bit and facing more towards the channel. And then R7 is the building where the two condominium buildings were. And that creates just a slight modification in Adelaide Circle. Let's maybe scroll down just a little more.
What's our 7?
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Commissioners, anyone have any questions of staff?
It's not doing the drag thing. No, because it's connected to this.
Questions?
I have a question.
Hey, Larry?
I don't have any issues with these proposed changes, but as we all know, we're currently in a severe housing shortage. Is there enough
There we go.
space for a footprint for additional residential if the demand is there? Sure. Well, I mean, that's up to the
Do you want to go
chair.
to Jake?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, planning commissioners. So the short answer to that, Commissioner Spataro, is yes. Also, there are additional residential assets in R4 that are still contemplated on that site. Another thing I would mention is over that 5-year housing needs assessment, the very higher end housing, while it does reflect a need of hundreds of units of those over the next 5 years, it is the softest need. We need the fewest of those units. So I think it's 168 units over the next 5 years, over $285,000, $286,000. These are closer to $1 million in some cases. So I think right now that 55 unit condo, they're ready to close on financing for that, get that under construction, fill that up, and then I think by the time the market is, by the time they're contemplating that next condo after the hotel, we will probably be ready for another study. So.
Thank you.
We've got the site plans pulled up. The
Brian?
So, I don't know if this is to Jake or to Mike. What was the reason for the change, and how did that change from the time the original proposal came in to now?
So yeah, that's a great question, and I can speak to that. So since this project has been contemplated, the developers have been transparent, both in public meetings and in discussions with staff, that they were exploring a potential hotel. And formerly there were 4 buildings that were contemplated as condo placeholders on the site plan, and the thought was maybe one of those would be a hotel. What their hotel market study revealed is that an upper upscale hotel will do best in our market, and so they've added quite a few more amenities and also a lot of public facing amenities and aesthetic amenities, which has required a bigger building footprint. And what we've also seen is that with the advent of the housing needs assessment, as I mentioned, the need for upper upscale housing units is softer, which has turned into 2 of those condo buildings turning into 1 large hotel. But we always contemplated there was potential that one of those may be a hotel.
Thanks.
Question.
Sure.
Kind of outside
Hi.
the scope of outside the scope of planning and zoning, but with this new hotel, what is the job, or what is the job outlook that's going to bring?
It's substantial. Yeah, that's a very good question. It's a substantial job creation. I believe it's well over 125 full-time permanent jobs. Yeah, including construction or not including construction. So with all the various amenities at the site, the current projection is 300 permanent
So
jobs.
some of those are in the restaurant, because there's gonna be new fine dining restaurant in there. And then a lot of the jobs are related to hospitality. So it's, like at the Bear Lake Tavern, we have 125 employees right now in the summertime. So, I mean, there'll be a lot of jobs.
From a tax base and job creation standpoint, this is actually the stronger of the 2 site plans. And I think it also will assist the brownfield just because of the commercial construction components of the hotel versus condo building.
Could you refresh my memory as far as the apartments?
Sure. Yep. So in
How
a
many
future,
apartments are gonna be?
yeah, in a future phase, that R6 section is contemplated as potentially apartments. If you read the original PUD narrative, it lists that as a future phase apartment building. There's been and again, the developer has been very transparent over time. Like they're gonna kind of do what the market dictates. They had a potential partner for some apartments in maybe an earlier phase, but I think they're getting everything contemplated in the first phase, so the marina, the condo building, the commercial building, and renovations to the existing site done and up and running, and then they'll contemplate what comes next.
Okay.
And we as staff are very comfortable with that. That's kind of how this market is right now.
Any other questions?
Not for staff.
No. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't have a concern about the conversion to the hotel. I think there was that previous expectation that a hotel would be envisioned as this project, so I don't have a problem with that change of use to a hotel. Nor do I have issues with moving the other condo building. I do have a few questions though. One, I'm just trying to understand. I see in the current version, the one that was last adopted by the commission, is it diagonal parking coming off of Adelaide Circle? Is that what all those boxes are? I don't see it reflected here. It looks like a boulevard's been added in its place on the new PUD. So I'm just trying to understand how that road is changing, aside from the traffic circle to the west being removed. How is that road changing?
A previous iteration of the roads contemplated a one-way drive with angled parking. That's, I believe, due to staff requests on the fire access side, as well as design changes to the site, has transitioned that to parallel parking instead. And I believe two-way traffic on those roads. Is that correct?
I think the biggest change, if you look at Adelaide Circle on the north side,
Roundabout's gone there.
well, it's, you'll notice that there's like a short line and then a longer line just south of the hotel. The idea behind that is that it's a service drive. So for people that want to come into the hotel, they can kind of pull out of the way like you have at the airport. And for people that want to go to the marina, they can pull out of the way so that traffic isn't impeded. We couldn't do that with the one-way and the angled parking, and it's important to keep things moving there so there isn't too much congestion. And also, the other reason we did that is we were able to introduce 2 fire paths from Adelaide Circle up to the marina frontage, which Mr. Hammond wanted to see better fire engine access up there. So it does a better job of keeping traffic types together, so it doesn't interfere.
All road flow changes have been as requested by inspections and fire protection and public works staff. The only caveat I would mention, as Mr. Leestema mentioned, is there is that pull-in, check-in, valet section for the hotel, but that's not a public road, it's a drive.
What's the net change in parking? In public parking?
In total public parking, I think it's fairly minimal. I think we lose a handful of spaces going from angled spacing to parallel spacing on the roadways. The public parking lot is not impacted. You have, I believe, 6 per side. Actually, I don't believe it changes as I'm sitting here looking at it. There's 6 per side, 4 per side. You may have a net loss of 8 spaces.
It looks.
I want to mention something too, not to jump in, but R6, what I'm contemplating is that with our additional phases, parking garages do qualify for TIF. And so I would eventually look at doing would take R6, build a 6-story parking garage as kind of an intermediate phase, which would ramp up parking significantly, and then use that as a podium for putting housing and mixed use on top. So that's where it kind of goes. A10 will be sufficient for the multi-use and marina parking and some overflow from the condos, but once the hotel really gets geared up, I think that's when we would be looking at putting in something a little bit, denser in terms of parking.
Joe?
Okay.
Yeah, just with that kind of comment, certainly using the airspace above parking for housing or other uses certainly is a better use of the property. But also don't forget the street level. If you go that route, that interactive with the street makes it a lot less scary. So at least some
100%.
commercial spaces at street level would be very appropriate if you go that route.
So I can't take the credit for the hotel design. My wife designed all the buildings, but if you look on the far right-hand side of the hotel, Emily has designed in a whole bunch of small commercial retail spaces that actually go all the way around. So there's a contemplation of encouraging traffic from the street and the bike path for smaller private interests via that building. And that ties in nicely with the multi-use building. The space between kind of becomes a mingling promenade area for light commercial, consumer-focused businesses. We tried to improve the flow more than what was there before. The original idea behind the angled parking before was to do something that's very common in southern Florida markets and things like that, but when we moved, and that was really done before we put it in the hotel. But with the hotel, of course, you have a lot of people who are pulling up, who are unloading their stuff. They sit there for a little bit. Originally, we contemplated the roundabouts could be used that way for the marina, but we decided to just consolidate all of it in one area, so there's a concentrated onboarding, offboarding area, which we think will be smoother and certainly feel more cohesive, and it'll certainly feel more upscale at the same time.
Commissioner?
Since you're both answering questions, I'll just say I like to see the green space. It looks like there's a lot more.
That's a
green
good
space.
point. I was actually going to mention that there's a significant net increase in green area along the bike path. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fabulous. What's the plans for the green space?
So I didn't want to put, I didn't want to put it in, but what I love the idea that in front of the condo building, putting in some sort of civic, not an arena, but what's the word that I'm looking for?
Like a plaza.
Like, right? I mean, I have this idea in my head where it's a round circle that's set in the ground, and there's like Roman style seating that's like 4 or 5 rows, and it looks directly towards Beer Can Hill. I think that would be fantastic, right? And so it would turn into, we didn't put it on here because all it is an idea in my head, but having something like that where people could come by on the bike path and they could walk down the fishing pier and then they could sit there with their family and they could just stare, you know what I mean? Like, it'd be cool for the condo owners too because they can see stuff going on. You could have something like a little mini concert or, you know what I mean? Like just turn it into a cool civic area where people can hang out. But it's just in my head right now. Something, it needs to be something because it's too beautiful of a spot to restrict, you know.
Any other questions? Good? Okay.
Mayor Johnson there.
Thank you. Yeah, I certainly welcome the additional green space and for the enjoyment of the public and your residents there. Which brings me back to the question about parking. Like, where is the public parking available? Is it just this on street that has been reduced? We have public parking at 810. We have public parking in any of these buildings. Can you help me understand the public parking? Because one of the concerns we heard previously with this as we moved forward was the proximity to we have these publicly accessible property on the waterfront, but people getting to it, you know, outside of just the bike trail, particularly those with mobility challenges, how can they get closest to those public amenities? And so that's why I'm wanting to better understand this public parking situation.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So the public street parking is available. A10 is a public parking lot intended both for the promenade areas and the retail areas in the hotel, as well as the commercial multi-use building where there's a restaurant open to the public. That is the extent of the parking as of now. I would also mention while it is a further distance, all of the Western Avenue areas as well as the Hartshorn Park areas also have public parking with footpath access to the site. It's not shown on this site plan. The stuff that you see on the site plan is the featured parking.
So R6 has public parking or no? Is that where you're envisioning having the
As
parking
of
garage
now, I think-
incorporated?
Yes.
So A10 is going to be available for the public to park, right? R6, when the hotel comes up, I would like to see a public parking garage, and that would be public because it has to be in order to qualify under TIF. But I don't want to put a public easement on A10 because I may do the exact same thing there, right? So I may decide that I want to put another building there, but if I put an easement on, I can't develop it, it doesn't work. So the contemplation is that A10 will be private, I will own it, but the public may park there because they have to in order to get to the restaurant. There's some on-street parking, but when I build the hotel, I'll be looking at putting in a parking garage. But the other thing is too, is that, like, I don't know how many people here have been to the Bear Lake Tavern. It's an absolute joke when it comes to parking, right? Now, we have 180 people there at the same time when we're maxed out, right? Actually more than that because of boats, right? And I think we only have 32 parking spaces in the whole place. Now, what we've done is we have heavily encouraged using bikes, coming on foot, using boats, and that's something that, you know, we would want to do here as well, putting up, like, we've got these really nice wavy 11 bike parking things at the BLT, and now all of a sudden there's bikes everywhere that are coming, right? So I think And I personally like to bike, as everyone could see by my super nerdy new bike that I have today, right? I think that encouraging transport via things other than cars is part of the entire strategy.
Absolutely. So I would agree with that intent, and I would echo what Commissioner Spataro was saying earlier. I think that's important that where you have the parking garage with the development on top, the housing on top, that you do have the street-facing commercial or otherwise amenities. So that mixed-use development, I think that's important to the feel and the vibe and development of there. So
It's got to feel good.
yeah,
You know, it's got to feel good and it's got to feel easy. You know, I mean, when we didn't have enough parking, people would not come to the BLT, right? I mean, so we packed them in as tight as we absolutely could, and then we worked hard to encourage other forms of transport. Now, the parking garage, that's going to be 6 stories. It's going to be big, right? I mean, you could jam parking spaces in there like crazy, right? It's got to be enough for all the residents, plus all the people that are going to go to the hotel, right? Plus any spillover and additional capacity you might need to feed the other uses, right? So that's a whole different thing. I got this idea in my head for, and I don't want to get into it now, but an 18-story mass timber building, because the new building code allows you to put up 12 stories of mass timber on up to a 6-story podium, and that's where the idea came from, putting a parking garage integrated with that, so you have to have lots of parking.
okay. Yeah, and I'd welcome development in 810 as well. Rather than, I don't think any of us necessarily want to see expansive parking lots, but parking incorporated
I
into
don't either.
to
I mean-
buildings and developments. My only concern was just the parking in proximity to our waterfront, particularly that fishing dock, making sure that people have access to it.
Yeah, see, I mean, I
The
think
wide
the
right of
hot
way.
spot for people to
Thank
go
you.
is probably going to be closer to the multi-use building, because that's where you're going to have the event center and you're going to have the restaurant. R7 is going to be all green space to begin with, so it'll be kind of a natural mingling area. Yeah, fishing pier is important.
And also, I would note that the West Peninsula, which is in this PUD but not pictured here, will have a new public parking lot that's specifically for public access to fishing areas and promenades, just for the public's edification. There is an additional parking lot
At the Hartshorn.
at the Hartshorn Park.
Yeah,
That's for walking that park, but you could park there and walk easily to this area as well.
we started with the gravel, but we got to get back and keep working on it. But there's more capacity there, to Jake's point.
Mr. Spataro?
Thank you. You know, I think we're all concerned about this, although having been a lifelong Muskegonite, I know there's a lot of people, if you're more than 10 feet away from the door, there's not adequate parking. So, and given that our downtown is blighted with literally thousands of unused parking spaces, I prefer the design that you have. I would love to see A10 developed the way you are with R6 at some point.
Yeah.
Because to me, that's the biggest blight in this whole thing, is that you have this massive surface parking lot kind of creating a donut hole in the middle of the development. I understand why you're doing that, especially in the early phases, but I do think we need to design around actual need and not because there's a few people who, we can, as we have downtown, we can designate street parking as handicap parking for those who legitimately have an issue with reaching the waterfront amenities.
So there's parking in the condo building. Like we're trying to pack as much parking into the facilities as we possibly can. Like we've got 50 spaces in the condo building, but we also put in 26 golf cart parking spaces. So we're trying to encourage people to drive less and walk and bike and golf cart more. Just need to get golf carts legal downtown someday.
It'll happen.
I kid. Big and snowmobiles. Phew. Oh.
We got to get winners back for that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But to bring us back to the issue at hand, that is an important point. So to the mayor's question about making sure there's adequate public parking, resident parking for the under construction or pre-construction condo building does include pedestal parking in that building. So theoretically, those folks, and other than their visitors, will not be using that 810 lot. That was a point I wanted to point out.
Okay. Follow up.
Okay.
With regard to the carts, the golf carts, I just want to, and this is tying into the bike path, but because there have been concerns about golf carts on the bike path in the past, so I want to make it understood
I know
that golf carts cannot be used on our bike path.
I know.
As non-motorized trail. And so while you're contemplating in this building, there should not be an expectation that your residents or your renters can use golf carts on the bike path.
I know, I'm just saying it would be great, but it'd be cool. What's
And
that?
which
Little Ambergris K.
That's right, that's what I'm saying, right? They do it in Sanibel, right? I mean, they do it in Anna
They do it in
Maria,
the
they just,
villages,
people
yeah.
like cruising around on them. But maybe that's a way to road diet and take away, side parking spaces and encourage e-bikes and e-transport. That's, anyway.
get that commuter lane.
Well, I mean, it's
Commuter
fun too,
cycling lane.
you're outside and
Right.
you got the wind blowing in your hair and
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, so well-used bike path, which then leads me to my other question. So, what's outlined in the staff summary speaks to specifically R1 as well as R7 and the changes to those buildings, but I also see changes to the bike path on here. So are we, with the approval of this PUD, are we approving these changes to the bike path as they're reflected, or is what was in the previous PUD amendment, which had a condition that the bike path was subject to site plan approval by the staff and the commission
They changed it.
internally? So that's what I'm wanting to understand. Like, if we approve this PUD, is that locked in?
I mean, you could change it again.
I know that's coming
if you
to
want.
tonight. We had this
Yeah.
on the commission agenda tonight. That was added, kind of 11th hour, but that was added with the deed transfer for the bike path. And this is currently reflecting what's in there. So, I mean, the commission could not approve it tonight. And so is this locked in if we're voting on this as is? I'm trying to understand the
It's locked in.
implications.
Yeah, so it would be locked in as approved on the PUD, so reflecting the deed transfer with the rounded edge and then the bike path coming through the public plaza area close to the commercial building. That is what is reflected in tonight's commission meeting. So there are changes to it in the sense that we as staff push back on the previous site plan, as you'll remember, as the condition you referenced, saying we don't want right-hand turns. It needs to look how it looks now, just closer to the water. That was what was contemplated.
Yep.
In the, I would also point out that the portions of the PUD that we're amending, those portions for the bike path between B1, B3, A8, are not changing. So the stuff in the upper right-hand corner, it's things to the south and west or left in the picture. So just as a observation.
So can we keep that previous condition?
I believe so, and I believe that what is before the commission tonight meets that condition.
Well, I mean, you just said the previous condition was to eliminate the right angles, and we have the right angles still in here.
The right angles as
Yeah.
reflected in the previous site plan.
Right.
Yeah, they're still in here. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, the easement, I see what you're getting at.
In the, in
Yeah.
the northeastern edge,
Yeah.
you still have those hard angles
I
where
see what you
previously
mean.
we
Yeah.
discussed smoothing those angles throughout, and
Sure.
that's not what's reflected in here or what's brought to tonight.
So I think it's important to reference that while the easement shows those right angles, the easement area that's in the commission packet tonight, that area is a large publicly paved area. It's not a narrow, sharp right turn in the design, in the site design. So, and then on the left-hand side, which would be the westward side, the right angle is corrected to reflect a loop, where there is only bike path there and the rest is green space. So on what would be the northeast section, closest to the commercial building and the restaurant and the public walkways out to the middle peninsula, there is an easement that reflects like a 90-degree jog, but it is also surrounded by other paved area where people can. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a one big like open area, so while the actual strip of city property may be 12 feet wide, it's surrounded by an area that's similar, like it won't be possible for people to just, I mean, it won't just stay on that one spot. with
So
their
from a
bike.
riding perspective, there is not like a
Like
hard
ran
right
across-
turn where there's
Actually-
not a.
It's not actually reflected in this PUD. It's obscured. I'm looking at what was shared for the city commission tonight, and the proposed trail easement on theirs does not quite align with this PUD because it's showing it coming between that circle and B1, but I don't see the. I think you're
He's
missing
Well,
the
because
line.
that whole area is like one general paved area.
Yeah, it's all
right. So
paved.
it's not
So you're
really
talking about
delineated.
A8, right?
It is
It's-
jotting across just south of the proposed one is jotting just south of 8-8 and then diagonally cutting across behind B1 and then going hard up and then a hard left. So it's not clearly identified in this PUD,
But
which is fine by me if we continue the previous condition, which was subject to,
that whole area is probably gonna have the same surface decoration. So,
what's the need for that circle right there?
the need for the circle was to allow people to drop off right there if they wanted to. Right, so it's more of just a easy accessibility to that promenade area. So like if you had someone who needed a handicap drop off or what have you, you could. I mean, we could theoretically eliminate that too.
Or reconfigure it so
But
you
that's
still
how
have.
your, that's how your mobility limited people would access the restaurant.
You could you could reconfigure it though in a way that you still have on the shoulder where you can pull up and drop off without having the full on traffic circle. The reason why I'm wondering about the traffic circle is does that free up sufficient space there to soften the angles of the proposed bike trail that's going there?
So here's,
That's the concern. And I've gotten several emails just since last night, and this only got shared last night that this was on the commission's agenda tonight. And I've got several emails since then. So I'm trying to understand the implications here going into tonight's commission meeting where we're voting on a deed transfer.
so that whole area there is just one big open paved area, right? I could have theoretically, I guess, widened it to the whole thing, I guess, right? But you're not going to be able to tell what is a bike path and what is the promenade because it's all going to look the same. It's probably going to be some nice decorative type sandstone, right? So even though the strip of property owned by the city is 12 feet wide, the entire area is going to have the same surface on it. So it's going to be, frankly, unrestricted traffic in terms of people are going to come in and they're probably going to go off the path a little bit to the left and they're going to sit by the multi-use building. I mean, it's all going to look the same. There's a technical right-of-way where the city actually owns the property, but it's going to look the exact same. So there won't be any hard angles per se because there's nothing restricting them from going off of any area in that promenade.
So the built environment and the final, and it's not easy to see on this PUD plan just because it's black and white lines, but the built environment would be like a plaza paved environment in front of that building. And then to reconnect to the trail, we have legal right through that easement that you're, or through that deed that you're considering tonight to get back to the rest of the bike trail.
Yeah, makes
That's what, I think that's what we're trying to convey is like that, on that section, that entire built environment will be paved area. So there's not, as the other side, the northwestern side, where we had a real correction to make, where we had that sharp corner in the original PUD and we corrected that to a rounded corner. That's because that is all green space around it. And so if you were to go off trail, you could, at a right turn right there, you could potentially face injury or safety issues. This one is designed to be a built environment for everybody. And so if I'm a cyclist and I'm coming through there, then I can still connect to the bike trail, but I'm going through this public space. But we retain legal right through deed to have people do that. The other thing to consider is that we've added what we call like the commuter lane for working terms, so that folks that are really trying to bike for speed and distance and don't want to go through like a built pedestrian environment can take that route and go around. And that was relatively well received at our public forum that we previously held on that item.
Sure was.
So setting aside that northeastern portion of it, can you speak to the western portion that's now been curved? It's hard to gauge how close that is to the waterfront and the proposed one that's on the commission agenda tonight, and then in the planned, the updated proposed PUD. So I'm just trying to better understand like how close that is to the water's edge. I mean, on the one hand, we like it being closer to the water, but on the other hand, we know that we have had high water issues, and our bike path has been washed out, and we've had to great expense replace it. And so I'm wondering, to understand how close it is to the water's edge and the threat.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this, it's approximately half the distance that it was, without getting into specific footages. There's a conservation easement along the water's edge that will be maintained and not infringed. The other thing to note is that the entire site is being raised substantially. We never had flooding issues, to my recollection, in this stretch of bike path through here because it was already quite high. But in order to accommodate the foundations for the construction going in there, it's had to be raised. I don't know exactly how much. So an additional 5 feet, and the trail will sit on top of that. So it's actually going to sit 5 feet higher than it did before.
It is certified out of the floodplain.
Yeah, and it's technically out of the floodplain as well. So while we have had high water issues in other stretches, this is probably the area of the bike path I'm least worried about because we didn't have a problem at record high levels at this stretch before, and we're raising it 5 more feet.
Okay.
So people are effectively moving halfway closer to the water, and it was already only 40 feet away from the water, and going to be sitting higher than it
So
was
that
before.
section is going to be what hadn't been an issue in the past, but it's also going to be raised higher going forward.
Yeah, the whole site is 5 feet higher right now. I
Okay.
believe. Yep.
All right. So, any other questions?
Just one comment.
Okay.
It's not Adelaide Circle. It looks more like a square to me. Sorry, Ryan. Just saying.
Adelaide Polygon.
We,
I don't know.
You know,
My
I would
geometry.
actually, it would be great to put that under a motion, just so it can, you know, I hereby approve under the condition it's renamed
Just saying.
Adelaide Polygon.
Mike?
yeah, I'd like to mention our attorney did recommend that we make 2 motions, one vote on if it is a minor change, and then another vote whether to approve.
Okay. Okay, someone want to make that
Yeah,
First.
but I can't see it.
motion?
I make a motion that this is a minor change under the criteria that it's reducing the density of the project that was previously approved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Keener,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Zade,
No.
Montgomery Keast,
Yes.
Spataro,
Yes.
motion passes.
Okay. And we need a second motion.
The motion.
No.
Go for it.
I motion to approve the PUD amendment for Adelaide Point as presented.
Support.
Oh, sorry. I was going to put the date on there, but I can't see the date on them.
If I may, Chair, I think the mayor contemplated keeping that additional condition on the bike path on this motion as well. Is that what you were?
Carry over from our previous.
Yes.
amendment.
Okay.
I don't know if we need to, previously we said our previous amendments still carry through this, but I wanted to get that clarification. So do we need to
I'll
Conti-
put that in there. Yeah.
add that
Yeah.
condition again or?
So what's the date on the plan, Mike?
The proposed one,
Yeah.
it was submitted last Wednesday.
It's July 5th.
Yes.
The
Okay.
city attorney did just give clarity
Oh,
that
okay.
any amendments do
Yeah.
carry forward unless they're materially changed by the motion that you're approving. So,
Okay.
which I don't believe this is because it remains the same.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll put in the motion. I move that the requested amendment to the plan unit development at Adelaide Point, address 1148 and 1204 West Western Avenue, be approved as presented, and all previous conditions still apply.
And I'll still support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Commissioner Zade?
So coming into the meeting today, I had some concerns about the changes, and I feel much better having heard the discussion about the changes and the reasons why. But I have to say I'm not real excited about losing 110 housing units and getting a hotel in exchange for that. We're losing 110 units with permanent residents, which would generate additional income tax dollars and whatever else, in terms of property taxes, so forth. So anyways, I'm just not excited about that. And I do think it is a significant change to the plan. We've had a number of changes come before us since the regional development, and I think some for the better and some maybe not so good, in my opinion. But that's my concern. I'm going to vote in favor of the motion, but I'm just wanted to say I'm just not as excited about the changes maybe others are.
Understood. Okay, any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Johnson,
Yes.
Seifert,
Yes.
Keener,
Yes.
Doyle,
Yes.
Mazade,
Yes.
Montgomery Keast,
Yes.
Spataro,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you.
So I just want to make a quick comment on that. R6 would have, it didn't start out this way when we presented our original plan, and it's not denoted on here, but if I build R6, there's 120 units just in that building from what I've laid out. And if we do A10, there's going to be close to 100 more. So your comments regarding housing is something that I still kind of have contemplated. But to end the meeting on a humorous note, what does a giraffe and zoning regulations have in common?
I don't know.
They don't exist in the UP.
A zoning joke, pretty good.
Okay.
I hear a lot of zoning jokes.
All right, any other business? Update on previous cases? Anything going on? I do have one comment.
Yes.
Newkirk Electric on Laketon.
Yes, I did call them about 3 weeks ago about their landscaping, and they were in the process of ordering it.
They're still ordering. Okay,
So-
as long as it's
and they
gonna
said there was a
happen.
little bit of a setback with that. So
Yeah.
I was aware, and I did let them know. Technically, they're not supposed to be storing stuff until it gets screened, so they're working on it.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. It was necessary for us to close tomorrow.